Greetings to our audience. It gives me great pleasure to have had the opportunity to serve as one of the lead superintendent educators for this program for the past 6 years. And I'd like to echo the sentiments and thank McGraw-Hill and Cigna for their sponsorship. They do play a very vital role in the success and effectiveness of our academy. We're also excited and honored to have our keynote speaker, Erin Jones, for our summit. I want to talk a little bit about that, and I think the previous panel discussion serves as a good tee-up for a motivational conversation. Erin Jones was born in the United States, but raised in the Netherlands, where her parents worked as teachers. Erin speaks 4 languages and returned to the United States in 1989 to attend college, where she earned a BA in comparative literature with a focus on literatures of the African diaspora. Erin later earned her teaching certificate at Pacific Lutheran University with endorsements in English, also French, and ELL. She was named the most innovative foreign language teacher in 2007, and in 2008, she was elected as the Washington State Millikan Educator of the Year. Erin served 3 years as Assistant State Superintendent for Student Achievement in Washington State, where she was responsible for working with educators and policymakers to create policies and practices that would better serve students of color and students otherwise disenfranchised. She has taught in a variety of environments, from predominantly Black to predominantly white to some of the most diverse communities in the nation. Erin left the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction in 2012 to work in college access at the school district level. She left the job to run as a candidate for state superintendent and was the first Black woman to run for any state office in Washington State, a race she lost by a mere 1%. Let's welcome Erin Jones.
Thank you so much. Good morning, guten Morgen, bonjour, buenos dias, salam, marhaba, shalom. I am so excited to be here. And my sister, Kimberly Armstrong, is in the house. So I just have to give a shout out to my Washington State friend who I did not know was going to be here, which just totally makes my day. So I had to give her a shout out this morning. And Pedro's already gone, but Pedro Noguera and I have been on many estates together. And so, yeah, just super excited to be here this morning with you. I want to share a little bit about how I'm showing up in this space, and I have quite a bit of time with you, so just know I'm going to talk with you for a little bit. We're going to send you to breakout rooms a little bit, because I am, my heart is that of a teacher, always teacher. And so I know I'm engaging, but an hour and a half, y'all, when you've been sitting for an hour, yeah, that's not good teaching. So we're going to make sure we break this. I know we are just big 12-year-olds, y'all. This is the thing that I have learned. We are just big 12-year-olds. We know how to fake it better, but we're just big 12-year-olds. We'll find ways to answer emails and stuff when things get long. So I know this life. But just a little bit about how I show up in this space and why I'm here, and why I think this moment in time is exactly what I was made for. So I'm going to age myself, and I do this intentionally because I think my age is important. I was born exactly 50 years ago in 3 months in a place that y'all had probably heard of before, but didn't really know about until a year and 3 months ago. I was born in a place called Minneapolis, Minnesota. Why is that important? Because I was born out of the body of a white woman. I obviously am not fully white though, y'all, because y'all white people cannot do this with your hair. This is natural. This is not a wig. Okay, this is all me right here. Right here. But I was born out of the body of a white woman. And in fact, on the birth certificate, my official right now birth certificate, for the name of my father, it says Negro. That's what's on my official birth certificate today. My mother was not allowed to keep me because she had me with a Negro in 1971 in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And so she was forced to give me away. I started life in the Children's Home Society. A white couple showed up about 3 months later, and they would ask, who are the children nobody wants? And immediately the director said, well, the Black babies, of course. Now, y'all, if we're real honest, in America, we love to adopt some Ethiopian kids, Somali kids. No shade to that, but we do not love to adopt some Black babies in America. And my parents said, well, I guess we will. And the next day, they were disowned by both sides of their good Christian families for adopting me. And so my parents were forced to leave their small town in northern Minnesota to teach in central Minnesota. And that was an adventure for them. I became the only brown person in our entire county. It was really tough for my family. And so in 1976, my dad decided to take his teaching degree and apply for jobs overseas. I don't know why he didn't choose Atlanta or New York or LA. He said, no, we're going across an ocean somewhere. And so, in fact, the first job offer he got was at the American School of Iran. Now, I want you to think about what Americans were doing in Iran in the 70s and where the people were from who were working in Iran in the 70s from the United States. My dad almost took a job at the American School of Iran, but he had the foresight to ask this question. I have Black children. How do you think your community would handle that? And the superintendent at the time of the American School of Iran said, I wouldn't have a problem. I wouldn't have a problem with your children, but my community might. And my father, I'll never forget when he told me this. He said, I turned to him and said, I could never work for you. Y'all, as we talk about bold leadership, you as leaders have to be willing to stand up and speak truth. You have to be willing to stand up and speak truth. And I look today at my dad, who is the most humble. So he's a giant. We're all giants. I'm 6 feet tall and then add about a half foot of hair. So I'm about 6'5" when I show up in space. On here, all you see is the afro, but I'm a giant. My dad is 6'4", about probably 6'3" now because he's 77. He's shrinking a little bit. But my dad is the most humble human being ever and the most heroic. And I think all the time about what if my dad had not asked that question? We would have ended up in Iran. And if you know anything about Iran, in 1978, 1979, the American school was taken over by terrorists. We would have been there had my dad not asked that question, but he did. Sometimes we have to ask hard questions. As leaders, we have to be willing to ask hard questions. And my dad led by example. He asked the hard questions. And instead of being in Iran, we ended up at the American School of The Hague in the Netherlands. It's the school that serves the United Nations. So the World Court is about a mile away from where my school originally sat. And I would end up going to school with very powerful people's children. And I don't know that I appreciated that as a little girl. I just knew I was going to school. I got to go to one of the best schools in the world for free because my father taught there. That school today costs $30,000 a year for kindergarten, but I went for free from kindergarten to 12th grade. So as a little girl, I'm sitting next to ambassadors' children. Every American president from Jimmy Carter to George Bush walked the halls of my school. If they came to the United Nations, they came through the building. And so I didn't get to meet every president, but we got to see from a distance almost every single president, almost all of the ambassadors from Japan and Israel and Palestine and Brazil and everywhere came through our building. So I was surrounded by really powerful people. And I was never treated as if I was any different. Even though I was a teacher's kid and I didn't live in a big mansion, I was always taught I could be amazing if I wanted to be. And so I was amazing. Like I just showed up that way and I worked hard. And then as a 9-year-old kid, I would have a really powerful experience that would shape the rest of my life. My best friend in 4th grade was the Israeli ambassador's daughter. Her name was Yael. And if you remember Israel in 1979, 1980, kind of like where it is right now with Palestine, they were at war every day, except for we didn't have YouTube, we didn't have internet. So you'd get a notification in the newspaper, a bomb had just been dropped in Jerusalem or a bomb had been dropped in the Gaza Strip. And she wouldn't know for a week or two how her family was doing. And I want you to imagine being a 4th grade kid and not knowing if grandma's okay or aunties or uncles or cousins. And so here I am watching my best friend walk through trauma every day, but also have this joy for life and learning. And I decided I really wanted to be like her. And so I began to teach myself to speak Hebrew. She taught me at lunchtime. She gave me books and I started to learn Hebrew. And then a PTA meeting happened and my parents dragged me to this meeting. And I figured I'd sit in a corner and read a book. And I sit in the corner, and as I look at who's sitting at the main table in the library, the Israeli ambassador is at one side, but there's another man who introduces himself, and it turns out he's the Palestinian ambassador because his child is in the 3rd grade, right next door to ours. I want you to imagine Israel and Palestine being in the same room, the children being in the same school. And I had a revelation then at 9 years old. I am going to bring peace to the Middle East. So I said, I'm already learning to speak Hebrew. We're just going to learn to speak Arabic too. And so I was a weird little kid, y'all. I think as a leader, you have to be a little weird. You have to be willing to do some stuff that other people are not doing. So I own weird. Like in our house, we're just like weird with a capital W. Okay, we are just weird. But I began to learn Arabic. Decided I'm going to bring peace to the Middle East between Palestine and Israel. I just had this passion to build bridges. And I knew instinctively that language builds bridges. And I'll tell you, in school spaces, no different. Language builds bridges, or it tears them down, or it creates barriers, one of the two. But I wanted to build bridges with language. And in January of 1980, our school would get a call from the Sadat family. Now, for those of you older than 50 or older, you will remember Anwar Sadat. He was the president of Egypt. And his wife had this dream that if I could just teach little kids to commit to peace, we could stop having war. And at the time, her country was in the middle of a civil war. In fact, her husband would be assassinated about a year later. But she had this dream, if I could just teach little kids about peace. And so she asked if she could come and test out an assembly at my school. She had a friend named John Denver, and she thought if John came and sang with the children, and then she would speak. And so at 9 years old, I sat in an assembly with the president's wife of Egypt, and my choir got to sing Leaving on a Jet Plane with John Denver. Like, I totally did not appreciate that at all at 9 years old. I had no idea who this man was. I don't sing country music, but looking back, I'm like, I got to be around John Denver for a whole day. But even better, when she was done speaking, she asked the 4th grade teacher, who are the children most likely to change the world? I want to eat lunch with 3 of them, pick 3. And I got chosen to be one of those 3 kids. And I got to sit between John Denver and the president's wife of Egypt. And I'll never forget, she asked us at that lunch, how are you going to change the world? And I said, immediately my hand went up and I said, I'm going to solve the Middle East crisis. I'm learning to speak Arabic and Hebrew, and I'm going to bring peace between Israel and Palestine. And she did not laugh at me. She pointed her bony finger in my face and she said, Erin, you are a world changer. Now you're going to change the world someday. Not, young lady, I see lots of potential in you. You, Erin, are a world changer. Now, I also didn't appreciate that woman was from Africa. She was from North Africa. She looked like me. She was the first person I had been around who looked like me. Representation. The president's wife of Egypt told me at 9 years old, you are a world changer. Y'all, our words to our young people, our words to our staff absolutely matter. How to speak life or death into them. And that day, she spoke life into me, and she would forever change my life. She forever changed me. And I knew, man, if I want to change the world, I've got to be great at everything. And so I just made a commitment. Man, if my band teacher said practice 20 minutes a day, I was practicing an hour a day. If my basketball coach said go out and shoot 50 free throws, I was shooting 100. And by the time I got to high school, I had actually made the boys varsity soccer team as an 8th grader. I was playing in the high school band as a middle school kid, not because I was naturally so great, because that woman had spoken into me, you're a world changer. And I knew instinctively, if I'm going to change the world, I've got to do the best I can with everything that I get. And so I get to high school and I am the first kid to make all 3 varsity teams. And then I think, okay, if I'm going to be great, I need to take hard classes. And I took every single AP class except for physics, y'all. I love math, but physics, I was not so happy about physics. So I decided to take AP Spanish instead of AP Physics, but I took 11 AP classes in high school. And I get to my senior year and I'm applying for college from Europe. I was not like most of the kids at my school who had lots of money to fly all over America and go visit Berkeley and USC and all these places. By the way, shout out to my USC people. My son is at USC. He starts his last year of graduate school on Monday. very expensive, but very good program. So shout out to y'all USC people. But my friends got to come and visit the United States and see colleges. Y'all, I got brochures. I had to pick my colleges based on some brochures. And what I knew is that all of the lawyers at the United Nations had gone to Harvard and Princeton and Yale. So that's where I applied. I was like, well, I'm going to go to Princeton. That was my first choice. And then I'd heard about this other college, the sister school to Princeton called Bryn Mawr. And I applied there too. And then I applied to Howard as well. I'd heard about Howard, and I love the idea of going to a Black college, but just keep it real, y'all. There were like 3 of us in my high school, so I was a little terrified to go to Howard. But I love DC. I love the idea of DC, and so I applied to all these colleges, and my first yes was Princeton. And back in the 80s, my school, all of our college mail came to the counselor at my school. It didn't come to your house. And so I remember it's March of 1989, and they announced over the loudspeaker, Erin's been accepted at Princeton. And everybody's cheering. My dad is the favorite teacher, so they're all so proud and happy for him and happy for me. And I'm so excited. And I get home that night, and I can feel as soon as I walk into the house, there's a heaviness there. And my parents are sitting at the dining room table, and they have my paperwork. And my dad asked me to sit down, and I know something's not right. Y'all, Princeton never read my financial aid paperwork. We learned this later. They looked at the name of my high school. They looked at my name, and they assumed I was a rich white kid. And even though I graduated with a 3.9 GPA, 11 AP classes, 4 fluent languages, 3 varsity sports that I captained for 3 years, Princeton gave me a $1,000 scholarship. And my parents had to tell me that night, it's not happening. It's not happening. And I don't know who was more upset, my parents or me, because they knew I had done above and beyond the call of duty to get to Princeton. And they had to tell me, honey, we've been saving money, but not that kind of money. And I don't know if you remember the first time you lost something big, but for me, it was a big deal. And I was just, man, depressed and sad. And about a month later, I got my letter from Bryn Mawr College. Now, one of the reasons I chose Bryn Mawr, how many of you grew up watching The Cosby Show? Who grew up watching The Cosby Show? Okay. Y'all, even in Europe, we had The Cosby Show. And Felicia Rashad is my Black mom. Okay, I'm just going to own that. She was my Black mama. We watched it every Thursday night. My white mom knows that Felicia Rashad is my Black mom. Like, that is just how it was. I wanted to be Felicia Rashad. I know he is a hot mess, Bill Cosby, but I loved Claire Huxtable. I wanted to be her. I wanted to be a lawyer like her. And so my thought about Bryn Mawr was it's in Philadelphia, the home of Claire Huxtable. And Will Smith had just started The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and we got that too. And so I thought, man, Philly, yeah, I'm going to go to Philly. Now, if you've ever been to Philadelphia, you know the city and the suburbs are like 2 different countries. But I didn't know this because I had never been to America. I didn't know that there were no Black people outside the city. I just knew Huxtable and Will Smith. And I came to America. And I get off a plane and drive out to my college campus, and the very first sign in my college town said this: Lower Merion. So Lower Merion was a county. Lower Merion Cricket Club, no coloreds or Jews allowed here. And that was 1989 on the main street, not a mile from my college campus. And I remember that moment, seeing that sign. And I had studied American history, y'all. In Europe, we know American history. We studied Reconstruction and Jim Crow, and we'd studied American history. And I knew what that sign meant. And I knew that if my mother saw that sign, I was going to be on the next flight home. And so I left my mom asleep in the taxi cab that night. But I'll never forget that sign. And it didn't come down until 2012. So I want you to imagine being a colored girl in a community where a sign like that is absolutely present front and center on the main street. And I would try to survive on this college campus. My second week on campus, I had a white woman walk up to me and she said, do you know you're only here because we have to have 10 of you? And I just remember looking at her and saying, 10 of who? Because in Europe, we didn't identify as skin color. I understood that I was Black, but it's not the same. They have their race issues, y'all. I'm not saying they don't. But I had not thought of myself exactly in that way until that moment. And she said, 10 Black girls, affirmative action. And that was how I learned about affirmative action that day. And I remember that was the first day I really doubted my potential. Not that I'd ever thought I was all that, but I knew that if I worked hard, I could be good at anything. That was the first time I began to question, did I really deserve my spot? And like a dummy, I walked to the admissions office right across the street and I asked the director, so what's this thing affirmative action? And that poor woman had to explain to this 18-year-old, yeah, we do only have 10 and you are one of our affirmative action admissions. And I began to really question myself. Now, y'all, looking back now at 50, man, I more than earned my spot at Bryn Mawr. But at 18 years old, when you're in America and there are no cell phones to call home, there's no email to send an email home, you're all by yourself. It is really easy to begin to doubt yourself. And so I began to doubt myself. And then I got followed in the store. Every time I went to the grocery store in Bryn Mawr, I got followed. So I stopped going to the store. I'd never experienced that before. And then I played soccer and basketball and I was great and had great seasons. But when basketball season was over and I no longer had community, do you know, not one person checked on me? Not my coach, not any of my team members. Nobody checked on me. They just assumed, hey, we're on with our own lives. She's going to be on with her. I stopped going to class. I stopped eating. And then one day in April 1990, I began, Lower Marion Superintendent. Okay, we need to talk. On April, the first Saturday in April, I woke up and the sun was shining on my face and I felt this urge to walk and I began to walk and my Philly folks will remember on the main line, there are all these tiny towns and there's a little tiny town about 3 towns outside of Bryn Mawr where the help lives. It's where the Black families lived who worked in the white people's mansions. And right in the middle of that community, a guy named Dr. J had built a basketball court. And I ended up in that little neighborhood and I'm like, there are lots of people who look like me. For the first time, I'm seeing people who look like me. And this tall man would call to me from the basketball court, hey girl, you look like a ball player. We need one more. And he looked like a person you did not say no to. So I was like, okay, I'm coming. I got my shoes on. I would play with Dr. J that day, all day long. He and his sons were out there. I had no idea who this man was because I did not grow up in America. And he took off with his sons about 7 o'clock that night. And I'm sitting on the sidelines with 3 young Black men, probably 15, 16 years old. And I asked them, hey, who's that Jay guy? He's pretty awesome. They're like, who's Jay? How do you not know Dr. J? Because I'm from the Netherlands. And they're like, the Netherlands? What is that? Not where is that? What is that? And I'm trying to explain to them and they're looking at me like I'm an alien from another planet. And I said, you know, where do y'all go to school that you don't know where the Netherlands are? And all 3 boys said, we don't go to school. We stopped going a long time ago. And I said, isn't it by law? Don't you have to go to school in America? Well, maybe, but nobody's ever checked on us. And in that moment, I knew my why. In that moment, I knew exactly how I was meant to change the world. I had been born for this. And it was all I could do to not cry in front of these boys. And as I left, I asked them, so what are your dreams for the future? And each boy said, we don't expect to live to be 21. And I ran all the way back to my college campus. And at the time, you couldn't just call directly to Europe. You had to call an operator and they would call Europe. And I woke my parents up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I'm crying on the phone and I said, Mom and Dad, thank you for loving me unconditionally. Thank you for being my champions. Thank you for changing the world as teachers. I never saw teachers as world changers. But in that moment with those boys, I knew that a teacher could change their world. And I knew that I needed to be that kind of a teacher, like my parents. And I said to my parents at 18 years old, I want you to imagine, how many of you have children? Who has children in here? I want you to imagine your 18-year-old child telling you they're moving to the other side of the world and I'm not coming back. That's what I told my parents that day. I said, I'm not coming back. I know that I'm supposed to teach children who look like me. Thank you for teaching me well, but I need to give that here in the country of my birth. And I never did go home. I've been in the United States now for 32 years. I started teaching in North Philadelphia. My husband played Division I football at Oregon State and then got a full ride to Notre Dame for graduate school. And so we got married at Notre Dame. I see you, Doctor. I saw that there. I actually taught, how many of you have heard of Pete Buttigieg? Who's heard of the Mayor Pete? Yeah, so Mayor Pete was in the 8th grade when I taught 6th grade English. So he walked by my classroom every day, y'all. He was just little Pete. I didn't know who he was. I did not get his autograph. I should have done that. But anyway, I got a chance to be to teach in South Bend, Indiana for a couple years, and then my husband went to Bible college in Columbus. He was a professional student for a long time, y'all. He went to Bible college in Columbus, Ohio, and I taught ELL there. And then, oh, I see another person for the Ohio State. Yeah, anybody, Ohio, yeah. I see you. I see you. I had my second son at the Ohio State University. And then after our second child, I was like, honey, I cannot raise children by myself. Like, this is not going to work. We need to move closer to family. And the closest we had was Washington State. So we moved out to Washington State 24 years ago. I knew with two little Black boys, I could not leave them in a daycare. I had watched what happened to little Black children in public education, and I knew that they needed to know how to read, write, and do math before they went to school. So we sacrificed and lived beneath the poverty line for 5 years so that I could stay home with them and teach them and make sure they knew. And I not only taught my children, I had 15 children in my community that came to my little school in my garage. And so I did that until my children were school age. At 28 years old, y'all, I got invited to try out for the WNBA. They did not know I was 28 years old because y'all Black don't crack. So I think they thought I was 21 or 22, but I got a call from the WNBA at 28 years old, and they said, we would like to offer you a tryout. And I wanted to say, do you know how old I am? Do you know how many kids I have? I had 3 at that point. I did not say that. I just said, when are tryouts? And they said, 3 months. I said, I will see you there. And I got off the phone and said, what the heck did I just do? Why? But y'all, here's the other thing. As leaders, you do hard things, right? Like, you do hard things as a leader. You stretch yourself. And so here I am at 28 years old, like training every day and teaching my kids and training. And my kids were on the basketball court all the time. And some of them like it, some of them don't. Not all 3 of them are basketball lovers, can I tell you? My largest one hates basketball. He's 6'4", does not do basketball. But anyway, I am training. Why is this important? Because I would not get just one tryout. I would get 2 tryouts for the WNBA. I would try out on a Friday night in Seattle, or Friday all day in Seattle, and drive down to Portland and try out in Portland Saturday all day. About lunch on Saturday, I was like, I'm just going to die right here. I am old and tired. And as much as I like basketball, I do not love it like that. But I have worked too hard to not finish. So I'm laid out on the court at lunch, and something in my head says, Erin, you gotta finish. You gotta finish. Leaders finish too. You finish even when you're tired. You push it all the way through. And so I did. I fought all the way through to the end. The last buzzer rings at 6 o'clock, and I am literally on the court. Like, you can just bury me in the rose. Just bury me right here. Just bury me right under the floor. I'm not going anywhere. And suddenly there's a camera over my face, and it's NBA Live. And they want to do an interview because they informed me, you are the oldest woman to ever try out for WNBA with the most children. I was like, oh, yay. My 10 seconds of fame for being old with a lot of kids. But here's why this story is important. After that interview, an Olympic coach comes over. She said, Erin, I watched you all day. I watched you want to quit. I watched you. And I watched you find that extra in your tank. Y'all, some of you here have wanted to quit in this last year. I know you have, because I've been talking to superintendents all over the country. It's been the hardest year for almost all of them, the hardest year. And you found that extra in your tank. And she said, I watched you find that extra. And not only that, she said, I watched when someone else fell down, you picked them up. If somebody missed a shot, you said, come on, girl. Come on, girl, you got this. She said, I watched you exhausted find that extra gas in the tank and keep speaking life into people. And she said, I'm taking a group of American women to play against the Mexican Olympic team. Y'all, at 30 years old, right before the Olympics, I got to play against the Mexican Olympic team and be our player captain. Most profound experience of my entire life. She did not know that I speak Spanish fluently, so I got to speak at halftime on my 30th birthday and share my story. And when that game was over, I watched all the little kids line up to they wanted me to sign their socks and their t-shirts and their shoes. It was the weirdest thing. And I knew as those children walked by me, okay, Erin, remember the children. I knew that I needed to come back to the States and get back into education. And so I fly back after a summer in Mexico, and I get a call from my favorite cousin in northern Minnesota. He's also a teacher. He's also a basketball coach. And he said, Erin, I've been watching your journey and I need you to come to Minnesota and coach with me. Now, what I knew, my mother's family had never reconciled with us. My dad's family had. My mother's family stopped speaking to us. And I knew that my mom's mom still lived in the same small town where my cousin lived. And I said, I will only come if you arrange for me to meet with grandma. I have a little white grandma who stopped any conversation with us when I was 9 years old. Last time I saw her. And so I fly to Minnesota, coach the first day of camp. He drops me off at her home. And my little 4'11" grandma meets me at her door. And she brings me into her home and she has a little shoebox in her hands. And inside that shoebox is every school picture I'd ever taken my mother had been sending her little mom. Every certificate I ever won, there was a copy of it in that box. And my 86-year-old grandma says these words to me. Honey, do you know you were the favorite grandchild out of all the grandchildren? We just never knew how to tell you because you're, and she called me the N-word, y'all. Not Negro either. She called me the N-word. And I just remember being so shocked. Like, how could she say, you're the favorite and call me the N-word in the same sentence? Because America, we are not good at talking about race. We're bad at talking about race. And I knew in that moment, my grandmother had not hated me all this time. She just did not know how to talk to me. And I knew in that moment what I had been created for, not only to teach, but to be a bridge, not between Palestine and Israel, y'all, but right here in this country. And I made a decision that day at 30 years old. I will help America learn to talk about hard things. So I just want to invite you today. We have to talk about hard things as leaders. We have to talk about hard things. I know you know this, but I want to give you some strategies that I have been using, especially over this last year and a half. Yeah, we are back in the same place with our family over George Floyd. I will tell you what, when George Floyd was killed a year and a half ago, the white side of my family sent us messages on Facebook. If Black people would just follow the law. My family sends us those messages. We still have so much work to do, y'all. But here's one of the things that I just want to invite you to do. Last year, a year and a half ago, I lost all of my consulting work, everything. And in 48 hours, I went from having a really busy calendar, speaking engagements all over, to zero. I'm not on salary anywhere. I don't work for a university, zero. And I remember in that moment thinking to myself, but I have so much though, I have so much. And so I began to practice gratitude. Do you know that gratitude is like a muscle? If you tell me shoot a free throw, I'll automatically snap, cookie jar. I've shot 100,000 free throws in my life. I can shoot a free throw in my sleep because I've shot so many, muscle memory. Do you know that gratitude is like a muscle? There are not some people that are just naturally better at it. There are some people that are more practiced at it. Gratitude is like a muscle. The more you practice gratitude. And so on March 13th, I made a decision. Every day I'm going to practice gratitude. Y'all, I lost 9 friends last year. 6 of cancer, 2 from COVID, 1 died in a routine operation on the operating table. I can be here in front of you today and still smile and have joy in life because I choose to practice gratitude. And guess what gratitude does? Not only do you develop muscle memory, do you know that gratitude changes your brain chemistry? Dendrites actually reform in your brain to create a positive network. How many of you would say in your work as leaders, you need some more positive right now? How many of you would acknowledge like you need some more positive? Then be grateful. So we're going to practice this, y'all. We're not just going to talk about this. In the chat, I want you to type out, what is one thing that you're grateful for today? It could be as little as, yo, I got my coffee this morning. I got my coffee this morning. I actually went to the coffee shop before this and got my coffee. Or it could be as big as being alive. Yes. I want to invite you to make gratitude a part of your daily practice, whether that's you have a gratitude journal. My friend, Dr. Jenny Severson in Minnesota is the one that taught me all this. And she actually has a gratitude journal. In your staff meeting, take 3 minutes to just whip around the circle. What are you grateful for? If you have children, before they go to bed, as you're sitting at the dining room table, be grateful. I want to invite you to have a posture of gratitude every day, to make it part of your habit. So the second thing that I want to offer today, posture as you enter into this work of leading with equity in mind, especially. On March 12th, after I lost all my work, I had to turn to my husband. We just celebrated 28 years last week, but at the time we'd been married for 27 years, and y'all, marriage is hard. Marriage is not easy. It is not easy. But we had our really hard patch about 10 years ago. So fortunately, when the pandemic hit and we got stuck together, it was like, oh, I actually really like you. So I'm glad 10 years ago, y'all, if we'd been stuck together, I don't know that it would have stuck. I don't know that we'd still be here, but fortunately we did our work. We did our work, did our counseling and work. It's hard. But I remember on March 12th of 2020, turning to my husband and saying, I'm not going to be bringing in any money. And I don't even know when. I mean, it could be August before I get my first check. And of course, we have a son at USC grad school, which is expensive, y'all. Y'all at Howard, USC grad school is awesome, but it's expensive. And then we have another son in undergrad. And so I said to him, honey, I know you have a salary, but he's a teacher. I knew that my big part of the salary was going to have a huge effect. And I'll never forget what my husband said on March 12th. When I said, I'm not bringing in anything, he turns to me and says, honey, you've been doing a long time. I want to invite you to just be. Yeah, I'm going to say that again, because that transformed me. You have been doing for a long time. I want to invite you to just be. I think all leaders are doers, right? Like we're often doing too much. And we're doing in all different, we're not just leading here, we're leading at our churches, we're leading all over the place. And for him to say, just be, was better than I love you. I can't even explain it. I just burst into tears, and just the relief of just being able to think about, I get to just be. He said, honey, you know what? We just refinanced our house. We're good. The car payments we paid, just be. We're probably not going to go see a movie or go out to eat anytime soon. Washington State closed down, the first state to close down, y'all. We were not going anywhere anyway, but it was just nice to hear my husband say that. And here's what that allowed. And I want y'all to do this with me. Put your hands up in front of the screen like you're cupping water, like you're drinking water. I want you to imagine in your cupped hands, if you were to imagine who you are, what are you good at? What are your skills and talents? And guess what? You don't have to be the best for it to be your best thing. You don't have to be the best. I think sometimes we think we have to be the best at it to say we're good at it. No. What is that thing we're good at that you love to do, that you just will do even if you're not getting paid for it? I want you to picture that thing physically in your hands right now. Okay, you can put your hands down. I knew on March 13th, I had this vision in my head of my hands. And I knew the thing that I love to do, even if I'm not getting paid for it, is teach. I love teaching. I'm the crazy lady in the mall. If I see a group of 12-year-old boys hanging out, acting a fool, I will walk right up in the middle of those boys and say, I know y'all know better. Y'all know better. I think I just heard the N-word there. Me walking by you, I am that person. We'll be at the dance club. So my husband and I love to dance. We love to dance. So we'll go to the casino. We don't gamble at all, but they have live music here in Washington State. We'll go and dance all night. And I'm the crazy lady. If we're doing the electric slide or the cha-cha slide or the Cupid shuffle, and some person doesn't know how to do it, I'll stand right next to them and say, right, 2, 3, 4, left. Okay, honey, forward. I'm that person. Like I can't help but teach stuff. And so I knew what was in my hand was teaching. I also knew what was in my hand was languages, 4 languages. And I thought, okay, what can I give back to the world right now? As I watch my friends panic as COVID hit, what can I put out into the world? I knew that I had a Facebook audience of about 20,000 people. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to go live every day, reading books aloud to little kids every morning at 9:30. So I did. At 9:30 every morning, I'd go online. Mondays and Wednesdays, I'd read in English. Tuesday and Thursday, I'd write in Spanish. Friday, I'd read in French or Dutch. I did that every day for 81 days. I taught a class on equity for anyone that wanted to show up, and I had classroom teachers and administrators and just all kinds of people from all over Washington and then California, and then we had some people from Texas that joined us, and I just did it for free. So I don't want any money for this. That this is what I'm putting out, and this is what I have to give. I'm putting it out into the world. And then I hosted a class called Becoming a Change Agent for middle and high school children. And I thought, okay, what can I teach children about really thinking about efficacy and advocacy? And so I began to teach, and my husband in week 2 says, honey, you were spending way too much time writing lesson plans. Don't you have 20,000 followers on social media? I said, yeah. He said, aren't some of them change agents? Yeah. Why don't you just reach out to them and say, hey, can you come teach a class once? Yo, I had former NFL players come and teach my class. Isaiah Thomas is a former student. Isaiah Thomas came and spoke to my kids. Can you imagine a bunch of 12-year-old boys getting to hang out with Isaiah Thomas on Zoom? The University of Washington, which is our largest university in the state, the president reached out to me and said, hey, Erin, is there space for me? Can I come talk to your students? She said, I'm kind of bored right now because we're stuck. We're shut down. I don't have anything to do. She gave my students an hour and a half. Can you imagine a bunch of 12-year-olds being able to sit in a space with the university president, talk about her life as an immigrant, bring her cats on screen so they could meet her cats? Y'all, 12-year-olds love some cats. So my students got to meet 60 or 70 change agents. First Black Supreme Court Justice, the first Asian Supreme Court Justice. My kids got to meet some people. Y'all, we all have something in our hands. I think sometimes when we talk about this equity work, we start from this deficit perspective. We talk first about what we don't have instead of being grateful for what we do have. We think we have to be perfect at it before we try. And I just want to offer, if I have learned anything, it's, man, you got to step out there. I did not get chosen for the WNBA, y'all. But that doesn't matter. I got chosen to play against the Mexican Olympic team. Sometimes your greatest losses will open the door to your greatest opportunity. The last thing I want to do, and then Jessica, I do want to get us into breakout rooms after this next little piece here. I want to talk about something that I do in every training, but I also now do it in every meeting that I facilitate. I facilitate a lot of meetings for superintendents across the state of Washington with some of these hard conversations about CRT and masks and all the things. I do a lot of facilitation of meetings, and I have gone from, I don't talk about meeting norms anymore. I think what we've normalized is a way of being that is just not helpful. It's not healthy. I want to offer two thoughts. I think what political correctness has done in this country is it's taught us how to lie really well to each other. I'm just going to say, as a linguist, you know, I speak 4 world languages. I also speak body language, y'all. I speak body language. And when I came to the United States in the late 80s and early 90s was the origin of the political correctness movement. And what I would see is people knew the right word to say, but all of their body was telling me they did not believe that. And guess what? That's not changed over time. People are still doing that. They're saying the right word. But I can tell you don't believe that, though. I'd rather hear what you actually believe. I'd rather hear what you actually believe. And so I'm going to argue today that political correctness actually has done us harm. It's not been good for us. But there's another thing that I see on college campuses and many places that I also think has done harm, or it's not helping us. So let me just put it that way. This notion of safe spaces. So my son, those of you in California will know this school. He attended Harvey Mudd College for his undergrad. And my son is on the autism spectrum. And so he loves math and science, not so good with social skills at all. Better, much better now. But as a young person, just really struggled. And I remember he called me at 20, and on his college campus has several colleges there. And they had a really conservative, like alt-right speaker who came to campus one day. And all of the students that felt threatened by that speaker were invited to go to another space on campus that was deemed a safe space. And here's what my son, he called me on a cell phone and he said, Mom, so there's a bunch of Black and brown and LGBTQ students in this room, and there are counselors here and other adults here to help us facilitate. But we don't know what's happening in that other room. So we don't know what that speaker's sharing. we've seen other speeches they've done and we kind of have an idea, but we actually don't know what's being said there. And guess what, Mom? In another hour, those students are going to come out from that speech and they're going to be on campus. And we're no longer going to have this safe space to be with each other. And what if those students begin to speak those messages out to us? Who's going to protect us then? He said, I don't feel very safe. So here's what I want to offer. How does that translate to our work? Here's how I see it translate in American life. I see if it's a room that's mostly Republican and you're the lone Democrat, you're probably going to just stay quiet. If it's a room that's mostly Republican and you're the lone, mostly Democrat and you're the lone Republican, you're probably going to stay quiet. If it's a room that's mostly Christian and you're atheist or agnostic or Jewish, you're going to stay quiet. If it's a room that's mostly white people, you're the lone Black person, you're probably not going to speak up. I think what Safe Spaces has done is it's made us silent. And so I would offer, as a country, we're bad at talking about hard things, not because we're bad people, but because we have not practiced. We're not practiced at talking about hard things. And so I want to invite this last thing before I send you away to breakout rooms. I want to invite you to think about maybe framing your meeting norms as brave spaces. So this is how I talk about them. I talk about community agreements that lead us to being our best and bravest selves, because I think leadership requires being courageous and brave. I know y'all know this, but I actually talk about setting norms that really center courage and bravery, not safety. Because you know what, when we play it safe, we don't try hard things. And I think that's where we've been. We've gotten stuck there. So here's what I would offer for brave spaces. Number one, when it comes to equity, I tell folks all the time, if you want me to come and do a training on equity, I'm not just going to come and do 2 hours, because we can't fix stuff in 2 hours. And there's way too many schools and school districts that want the 2-hour bam. There is not a 5-point plan to equity. So in this brave space, I'm going to offer, let's pivot from fixing to learning. Let's pivot from fixing. I think we always want that 5-point plan. Like, come give me your 5-point equity plan. Y'all, equity happens in context. What equity looks like in Houston, Texas is different than what equity looks like in Atlanta, Georgia, is different than what it looks like in Memphis, Tennessee, is different than what it looks like in Baltimore, is very different than what it looks like in Seattle. So I'm going to offer that equity is contextual. And so let's pivot from fixing stuff to learning, to staying in this posture of learning. I also want to offer that brave spaces require discomfort. So I pivoted from playing basketball to running about 5 years ago. So at 45, I was like, we're going to hang the shoes up because I haven't broken anything, haven't had to have any knee surgeries, we're just going to hang it up while we're still at the top of our game. I'm just going to run one direction. Now, y'all, I thought running was going to be easy because I'd been running with the ball my whole life. Who's a runner in here? Where are my runners? I know we got some runners in here. Okay. Y'all that like running through the woods, I don't understand you. Tracks or on treadmills, you like that? I don't understand you. I do it not because I like it, y'all. Give me a ball, soccer ball, basketball, volleyball, I do not care. Running without a ball to nowhere makes no sense to me, and I do it every week. I do it. In fact, y'all, last year at 49 on Labor Day, I ran a mile in 7 minutes and 20 seconds. So if you're not a runner, just know at 49, that's pretty fast. And here's what I'll tell you. I thought I was going to die. It's not easy. And guess what? This equity journey is like training for a marathon. And too many people want to train for a marathon the day before. But my runners know, y'all, you cannot survive a marathon, even a half. Let's just break it down to a half marathon, 13.1 miles. You cannot do that training the week before. Starting from zero. You got to start from 1 mile. So I'll never forget the first time I ran a mile without stopping. I thought I was going to die. And y'all, I had trained for the WNBA. I had played semi-pro soccer at 40. And I still, that first mile, y'all, I thought my lungs were going to just pop open. That's how it felt like they're just going to explode. But I got through the first mile. And the next day I did just 1 mile. And the second week I was like, okay, we're going to do 2 miles because I'm a competitor. And that first mile, I thought I was going to die. The second mile, my shins are like, girl, you played basketball for 40 years and soccer for 20. Stop it. Not like you. and my Achilles were aching. But I was like, I'm gonna get through 2 miles. So I got through 2 miles and I was like, okay, we're gonna try to do 2 miles every day for a week. And then I got up to 3 miles. Here's my truth for me. I don't know how the other runners are, but if I can get to 3 miles, I can actually get to 4 and 5. I get into a rhythm. I get it, and not, but see, the first mile still sucks every time. Yeah, it doesn't matter if I'm in shape to run 13.1 miles. That first mile, getting through that one is so hard. This work is no different than that. That first mile sucks. It's uncomfortable. And too many people tap out. They're like, you know what? Man, I'm tired. It hurts. And the reality of brave spaces is you have to press through discomfort. Discomfort is a guarantee. So no fixing, learning. Second, push through discomfort. Third thing, this one is hard, y'all, but it's so, I'm good at this work because this is important to me. Shame, blame, and guilt are not useful tactics in this work. I'm gonna say that again. Shame, blame, and guilt are not useful tactics in this work. It may feel good. And y'all, culturally, we are shaming, blaming, and guilting every day. Doesn't mean it's working though. I would offer that it's not working. Why does Brene Brown make so much money? Because y'all, we are doing harm to one another with shame, blame, and guilt. So I want to offer that in brave spaces, shame, blame, and guilt are not useful. We have to stop with that. And I'm just going to use a teaching example. How many folks ever taught middle school or you led at a middle school? Okay, I love me some middle school children, y'all. If you give me an age, it has to be a little crazy to love middle school. I own that. I told you, I'm weird and I'm a little crazy. I love 12 and 13-year-olds. I love them, love them, love them. And that, guess what? Y'all, 12-year-olds do dumb stuff all the time. Their brains are not connected yet. So they do dumb stuff. But guess what I never did in my career? In 30 years, here's something I have never done. I have never said, Johnny, you were so stupid. Not ever. Because you know what? Once you say that, Johnny is not learning from you anymore. He's done learning from you. And if you get Johnny back, it's going to require like months and months and months of work to overcome that. Like that's just not a useful. Now, might I say to Johnny, hey, come outside for a second. What you just did there was really dumb, Johnny. I know you know better. I may say that, but I'm never going to say, Johnny, you were so stupid. But how often do we hear people say, you're so racist, you're so ignorant? Yeah, that is a guarantee that that person is not learning from you. And I want to offer that if we're going to create spaces where people are willing to be brave and courageous, shame, blame, and guilt cannot be part of the equation. I also want to offer that you are going to make mistakes, even and especially as a leader. And when you do, here's the magic 3. Sorry. But that's not what I meant. I was just joking. You're taking me too seriously. Just, I am sorry. 3 words. Free, not easy, but free words. And then show grace for yourself. So when I played college basketball, if I missed a shot and we lost the game by 1 point or 2 points, I would beat myself up for days. I would replay the play in my head and think, man, Erin, you're so stupid. Why didn't you make that shot? As if there were not 4 other people on the court at the same time from my team. But I would beat myself up. That is shame. Okay, it's not useful. Here's what I do now. If I missed a shot, like later in my career, I would go back in my head and think, okay, was I fading away from the hoop or into the hoop? Did I set the block the right way or not? I can fix my form, but I can't go back and change that shot. I can work on my form for the future. So in the context of your work, when you make a mistake, you can't go back and undo what you did, but you can change how you do it the next time. So show grace for yourself and make a commitment to work harder. And let's show grace for others, for our colleagues, in the same way that we show grace for ourselves. Last thing I want to offer with brave spaces, and this is the hardest. I'm just going to own this is the hardest for me. I believe we do our best learning when we're curious. Curiosity is the birthplace of our best learning. And I think often we kill curiosity. We don't allow people to be curious. We don't encourage it. Really, starting in middle school, I think we kill curiosity. There's one right way, one wrong way. Well, there's lots of wrong ways, but there's one right way. And we tell children, this is it, this is the way we do it, because how often do we tell our staff that too? This is the way we do it because I said so, because it's in the manual, and we don't give space for curiosity. But here's, in the context of conversations about hard things like CRT and masks and vaccinations, I want to offer, I have taken a posture over the last year of, I'm just going to use an example that I hope will make sense to you all. I grew up in the Netherlands. No individual human in the Netherlands has a gun unless you're in the military or you work for the police. People do not have guns in the Netherlands. So I get to America and people have guns, and there's like this gun culture that I just can't comprehend. Like I struggled. And with the presidential election of last year, I'm watching all these people on my social media talk about Second Amendment rights, and you're trying to take away our guns. And I'm like, what is the thing with guns? And so my instinct was to get upset about it and I'm just anti-gun. I don't like guns. But what I said to myself is, I need to get curious. What if I were to get curious? So I've reached out to one of my friends who's really he's involved in the NRA. I love him, but he and I don't agree politically. But I said, you know what, John, can you explain to me why you love your gun so much? And we probably spent 3 days, pages of Facebook Messenger back and forth. Here's what I'll tell you. I don't agree with John on everything, but I now understand why John loves his guns. And in fact, the week after he and I had this conversation back and forth, John lives in a rural community up north in Washington State. A cougar jumped over his fence and almost attacked his 1-year-old baby. And he sends me a picture of him holding the cougar. He said, had I not had my gun ready, when my little girl went out, we thought the fence was tall enough, but it wasn't. That cougar got over the top of the fence. And he said, I was able to. And I was like, okay. That doesn't explain to everybody in guns, but what if we were to get curious about people who think differently from us instead of judgmental? And I'm not saying you have to agree. I think that's one of the dangers. I think we have to agree with everyone, and so we don't even want to go there. What if we were to just get curious and try to find some common ground? So want to offer gratitude. Number 2, what's in your hand? What are the assets you bring to the table? And y'all bring assets that you use every day for work, but I think there are probably assets that you have that you don't even think about using at your job that you could be using at your job, whether it's singing, or for me, basketball became an incredible asset, even in physical school spaces. Playing basketball connected me to lots of people in community that didn't like school, but because I was a ball player, I could go out and play on the street. Get parents to show up in school. And then last thing, brave spaces. I'm going to do one more thing, and then I'm going to invite you into breakout rooms. And actually, what I think we'll do is we'll do a breakout room, and then I'm going to give you a little bit of a break, about a 5-minute break, just to get some water, and then we'll come back for some Q&A. But in the breakout room, we're going to do one more activity before the breakout room. I want you to share with whoever's in your breakout room, what is your why? Why do you stay in this when stuff is really hard, when people are cussing you out, when you're reading the Facebook page for your school district and you're seeing people say horrible things about you or about your staff? What makes you stay? What's your why? So you're going to have a little bit of time to share your why stories. But before we do that, we're going to do an activity I call grounding in. And it's just a way to get yourself centered. I think we don't take enough time as leaders to just stop and check ourselves and get centered. So if you have anything in your hands, put it down. Put it down. Sit up as straight as you can wherever you are. And by the way, this is not woohoo stuff. If you've ever, ladies, if you've had a child and done Lamaze breathing exercises, very much like that, it's just regulating your body. Get your feet as flat on the floor as possible. I like to imagine that we are connected through our feet all across the United States right now. If you're able to close your eyes and feel comfortable doing so, close your eyes. Otherwise, find a spot on the wall and just hyper focus on that spot. We're just going to take 30 seconds to focus on the air in and out of our bodies, just 30 seconds. So I'm going to cue us in by saying, take a deep breath in, blow it out. I will count to 30. You just keep breathing deeply, and then I'll cue us back in at the end of 30 seconds. So take a deep breath in, blow it out. Take a deep breath in. Blow it out. Open your eyes, stretch. I just want to offer, I use this, I started doing this regularly when I was in debates running for state superintendent. There's always that person, and I know you know this in school board meetings. How many of you have that person that as soon as they come up to ask a question, you know, like, this is not going to go well. Like, you know that person because they come to every school board meeting. Yeah, I see some of y'all have that person. When you're running for office, there's always that person in every room. And my instinct at the beginning was they would ask that stupid question just to get me riled up, and I would respond back in kind. So it kind of riled up, and I never responded well in the moment. So if I'm really emotional about something, I do not say the wisest things. But what I learned is if I could just pause, take 5 seconds, literally close my eyes, I would count to 5. I always responded better if I just took a pause. I want you to think about if you just took a pause with that staff member or that community member, or before you responded to that tweet or that Facebook post about you, just pause. Sometimes, y'all, you need to pause for 5 minutes or maybe a whole day. Okay, you know yourself. But what if we were to just pause and then sometimes not even respond at all? I think sometimes we think we have to respond to everything. You don't. As a leader, you can't. You can't respond to everything. And so I want to invite you at least take a pause. And sometimes you just need to walk away, step away, step away. So I want to invite you now into breakout rooms, and we're just going to do 7 minutes. So if we could do a 7-minute breakout room, you're going to have 4 people in it. Please share a brief version of your why. And then let's be back here in 15 minutes. So you have 7 minutes to talk, and then I want you to take 7 minutes to get some air, walk a little bit, and then come back ready to ask questions. We'll spend the last 15 minutes. You can ask me some questions, and I'll give you a couple other resources. So Jessica, if you want to send us away, please put me in a group. I don't want to be stuck by myself in here. Okay.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
I am opening breakout rooms now.
Okay, let's see here. So those of you that are sending me email in the chat, if you could actually send me an actual email, because I'm just telling you right now to try to pay attention here and copy it. Anyway, it's just hard, y'all. I can do a lot of things at one time, but if you could just send me an email, I put my email in the chat. I want to offer to you 2 things in closing. So when I think about equity work and I think about leadership, there are 3 words that I am using to really move myself through these conversations about equity, about hard things. And what I would offer is that I think in the United States, there are 3 things we're really bad at talking about: race, religion, and politics. So in mixed company, we're really bad at those 3 things. And we've been taught to just not talk about them and avoid them altogether. I have this philosophy, we got to push in and just get good. We have to practice at getting good at those things. But there are 3 words that I'm using to move through this moment in time, to have hard conversations. And I want to offer these 3 words to you. I hope they'll help you kind of use them as containers: humility, humanity, and history. I think one of the things that struck me over the last 3 or 4 years is our lack of humility as a country. So from top leadership to athletes all the way down, like we just have a lack of humility. And so I want to offer that kind of my first word: let's show up to our work with the humility that we don't know it all. And we're never going to know it all. Like we just can't, even as leaders, like we can't know it all. And we can't do it all by ourselves. So humility, I don't know it all, can't do it all by myself. Humanity, I choose to center the humanity, especially of those who don't look like me, sound like me, believe the same way I do. Can I say that again? It's a hard one. This is a hard one. I choose to see the humanity of those who don't look like, sound like, believe like I do. I choose to see them as equally valuable in the world. It's really hard though, y'all, when they're calling me names and saying stuff, it's hard, but I choose to center their humanity. And then number 3, history. Every single one of us has a story. And our story has good, bad, and ugly in it. All of our stories have good, bad, and ugly in them. And some of the ugliest stuff that we did ourselves, some of the ugliest stuff that happened to us that we didn't have any control over. But all of our stories have good, bad, and ugly. Guess what? Your school district has good, bad, and ugly. There are certain groups of students that you've always served well. There are other groups of students you have not served well. And I want to offer that by ignoring the ugly, we can actually help it. We have to be willing to face it. So one of my rules is that you can't fix what you're not willing to face. So we've got to face the ugly. Guess what? As a nation, we have good, bad, and ugly too. As a nation. And I'm going to offer, and this may sound really controversial to people, I think there's been a notion in the last few years, especially, that if I really love America, I only talk about the good parts of her. I want to challenge you that I love my children so much that I want to celebrate Izzy, that he's at USC in his last year of graduate school. Awesome. And Izzy, I need you to go take a bath because right now your underarms, I can smell you. You need to go wash under your arms because your underarms are stinky. Y'all, as America, we got some stinky underarms. And it's actually not love for me to not say to my son, you smell. Now, if he chooses to not wash, that's on him. But it's not love as a mother if I let him just go out into the world with stinky underarms or unwashed hair. It's the same with our school districts, right? We have to be willing to call out all of it. And we can't just celebrate the great stuff. We have to be willing to own the stuff that's also not so pretty. So humility, don't know it all, can't do it by myself. Humanity, I choose to see the humanity in every person around me, even and especially those that don't agree with me. And number 3, history. So I just want to offer that again. I do have a book, y'all. I just became an author, and all of this is in the book. So if you want more and you were trying to take notes and you just couldn't get it all down, it is all in my book. And I'm not making a lot of money on this book, so I'm not promoting it because I'm trying to make money. I'm just telling you all the stuff that I've said today is somewhere in this book. Just got published on Amazon 3 weeks ago, so I'm super excited. And it has my fro on the cover, which I really love. That made me really happy. But if you're interested in more, it is there. It's Stories and Strategies for Racial Healing. I believe it will be a book that will bring you healing and will help you think about strategies and postures for this work as leaders. I want to open for some questions, but I want to throw out to you that, you know, this whole CRT, anti-CRT movement, you never heard me say critical race theory today. And here's the irony. I've been doing equity work for the last 15 years. I have never said the phrase critical race theory. Never, not once. Didn't come up. And so I've been telling folks, and I know this hurts some people's feelings, like that's a boogeyman. CRT is done in graduate schools, legal school. I mean, it's not something that I do. And you also never heard me talk bad about white people in this space. And you won't, because it's not a strategy I used. And so there are a lot of people that are misinforming and they're disinformed. And I think, again, we have to speak truth to people and say, you know what, and I'll just say, as a pastor's wife, you know, my husband is a Christian pastor in a predominantly white church. Well, our church used to be a lot of brown people, but with the election, the brown people left. Anyway, that's a whole nother story. But I've had to be in some spaces and be real honest with people about this is disinformation. This is not correct. Like what you're speaking, you know nothing about. And so, but here's my rule. I do not bring critique like that to people if I can't do it with love. I don't allow myself. So sometimes it means I'm just going to be quiet right now because I can't say anything with love. But I do bring critique at some point. And I do it with love, again, centering people's humanity. It's been hard though, y'all. I've had a lot of practice this year, a lot of opportunities to practice love. And love is not about how you feel. Love is a choice of how to act. Love is a choice of how to treat people. It doesn't mean you have to agree with them or like what they like. I choose to see you as equally valuable in the world. And it's hard as a leader when people are screaming in your ear, you're a horrible person. I can't believe you're making our children wear masks. I can't believe you're all of that. It's hard to turn and see those people as human, and yet they are. They are. And guess what? We're all hurting, and we've all lost something or some things in the last year. And so brave, gratitude. Remember, you've got assets in your hands. Remember, be brave. Remember to just take a breath. Humility, humanity, history. I'd love to open the space for a couple of people to ask questions. And then my email is in the chat, but I'll also put the best way to reach me is on Twitter. For you to send me a message on Twitter, I'll respond right away. Email is a little tough, y'all. I get 100 emails a day. So hard. It's so hard. I lose stuff there. After a day of speaking, I don't want to look at email, y'all. Just keeping it real. So if you want to reach me right away, the best way is on Twitter. I'm easy to find on Twitter. But any questions, go ahead and unmute yourself if you have a question for me or a thought. And while you're doing that, oh, thank you all so much. While you're doing that, I'm going to type my Twitter handle and my Instagram handle in the chat. Anyone a thought or a comment, a question? Everyone's just silent. Leaders are silent. Come on, somebody. Brave, courageous. Come on.
Right, Erin, I'll step up.
Okay.
Hi, this is Alton. Actually, I used to live in South Fair. I was on the school board in South Fair a few years ago.
Okay.
And I live just south of there right now. I like what you're talking about, because so often we use provocative slogans and then are surprised when people are provoked.
Yeah.
And I think that we have to talk more about gratitude and grace and love.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. If people can't hear it, then it's not useful. If you have just shut people out because of the slogan, it's not helpful. So I'll just give you an example. This last year, I had never put Black Lives Matter on my Facebook page because it was such a trigger for people that I was like, Black Lives Matter every day because I walk outside and I am Black. I love Black people. And so that was my Black Lives Mattering. But I knew that slogan for a lot of the people that I was trying to reach was such a trigger for them that it just became not useful to use it. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Anybody else?
So I'll just jump in. Hi, Erin, Mary Templeton, Roger's former
Oh,
colleague.
hey!
To you.
Oh.
I know the love part. Isn't that true? As we lead, which is darn complex, to like lead with love, and remember that everybody has value, and we are serving every single child in our system and in our community, and they all deserve the respect and love that we want for our own families. Thanks, and good to see you.
Mary, oh, that totally, oh my goodness, I didn't even notice you were there. Yay. Yes, love is so important. And y'all, love, again, it's not a feeling. You don't have to feel that. Here's the deal. I don't wake up every morning and look at my husband and say, oh my gosh, I feel so much love for you. It's a challenge sometimes, right? Like we make each other upset. Love is a choice. Eric, go ahead.
First of all, Erin, wow, great. I'm actually emailing you an introduction to somebody else who is kind of shares some of your same story, and I hope you guys get to meet. But separate from that, welcome. I want to ask, and this is kind of in the weeds here, but you're a really good storyteller. And I think that as superintendents, it's also really helpful for us. Not that it has to be like a job requirement, but I think it's really helpful for us as we attempt to do this work in equity to be good storytellers. Yes. And so I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the role you think storytelling plays in your ability to bridge these divides, and how you would encourage us to use storytelling in our own roles to do that in our own communities.
Okay, I know I have not even a minute left, so I'm going to try to do this in 30 seconds. Here's the deal. Everything in America is about storytelling. Every commercial is about a story. How we sell colleges is about a story. The better you can get at telling stories, the better your people are going to, and here's the deal. You don't have to be the one telling the story. So Eric, maybe it's not you, but somebody on your team has to be a good storyteller. Somebody on your team, because it's through the story that we find our humanity. The story is what connects us. It's what our humanity is held in our story. And so if you are not a great storyteller and that may not be your skill, figure out somebody who is, because I think the story is the only way. And it's how we sell things. And guess what, y'all? Y'all are salesmen. You're selling education. And so you have to be, it's why I was a great middle school teacher. I could sell education to my students. And so I've always used story. You don't have to be the one though who's excellent at that. If you're not, you need to find somebody on your executive team who is a good storyteller. That's a great question. Jessica, I think it's back to you, or Samuel, I'm not sure, but thank you all so very much for letting me hang out with you today. And I hope that I'll get a chance to see some of you again later.
So much
I'm going to ask
gratitude.
everyone to join us in giving Erin a huge round of applause, virtual round of applause, for a very powerful message. And as we all know, there's never enough time, but we hope that this is going to position us to continue this relationship with you, Erin. And we look forward to inviting you back during this cohort to get into some breakout rooms and have some continued crucial, critical conversation around this topic.